Evan, are you sure? You have to be sure.
That's him.
Post-production on this project started in production.
And cut.
So we needed to kind of organize ourselves and structure ourselves in a way that allowed Steven to work very closely with Michael Kahn and to edit as they were shooting and to get materials to both Ben Burt, the sound designer, and to John Williams, composer. So 9 weeks of post-production is incredibly fast, if not the fastest I think I've ever seen.
To prepare for this film, I know we had to figure out a way to have complete access with Steven. I had a viewing machine in his hotel room at all times, and I had an editing room. And whenever I needed him, we ran footage. This system we set up 30 years ago on Close Encounters.
Hans! Hans, what are you doing? Hans! Get back here!
I found the rhythm of this movie while I was shooting this movie, and the rhythm was either confirmed or denied to me in the editing room. When Michael would show me a picture and he would say to me, you know, I think where this scene occurs in the story, you should pick up the pace a bit. So Michael really helped me with my pacing. Because we could just feel the pace in the editing room. You know, I go from the set to the editing room. We have a little trailer that follows our sets, a little mobile trailer, and we're looking at the film and we're making notes, and that allowed me to make tremendous adjustments in how I was telling the story. And cut! It's very simple. I still cut on film because I love cutting on film. Just seeing my Kahn with his little guillotine, cutting the picture and taking a piece of Scotch tape and taping the two sides together is just, to me, ambrosia.
To paraphrase Steven, he loves the smell of it, the feel of it, the touch of it, and he likes to see what he's going to be showing on the screen. And we actually run film, so he'd be able to judge the timing and what it's going to look like. So Steven likes it on film, and I don't object at all. It's sort of a lot of fun. A lot of fun being the only one left who's doing it. And it was a wonderful experience. Out of all of them, it was wonderful.
Steven felt that the sound design on this movie was always extremely important. He brought on Ben Burt. Ben Burt did Raiders of the Lost Ark with us years ago.
Munich was a film which took place in the real world. It was based on historical information, and we were concerned with accuracy. So the first thing was to see if we could find recordings of just some of the basic things we needed: street ambiances, telephones, and in particular automobiles from that period. We did go to some libraries of sound which had been collected and recorded at that time, because by their very nature they would be chronologically correct. And then we organized recording expeditions to gather what we couldn't find, the period vehicles for the film, as well as some of the munitions, the Uzis and AK-47s.
The first person that got some of the footage was Ben Burt. He has a wonderful sense of what plays in a scene. If sound gets in the way, it doesn't get in the way. He got some wonderful backgrounds for us, some wonderful sounds.
The assassination of Zweiter was the first time the agents in the film went about having a mission and a target. And the idea was to make it very suspenseful. And the off-screen orchestra, which was part of the plan from the beginning, it was interesting because it was dissonant and unstructured, so it's unsettling. So I thought that the way to handle the sound was to magnify that empty world, so that you started out with all the natural street sounds, but once again, layers began to be stripped away until you got those lonely, echoey footsteps of him going down the hallway. Then you have the spooky elevator. Actually started with an actual elevator sound. It starts that way. But as it came down, I began to morph the sounds into a squeaky, clattery sound, which was actually some streetcars coming to a halt, the recording that I had. And it gets very quiet. If you want to make something loud in a film and you want to have impact, it's best to precede it with something very quiet, or a section of the film very quiet. So when those gunshots come on, You had the boom of those guns. Again, I recorded guns in a very echoey space. I did it in a parking garage. And then as a final accent, Zwade air falls onto the packages and the liquid spills out.
Mahmoud Hamshari. Yes?
We tried to treat each explosion differently because there's a number of them in the film and I didn't want it to be redundant. Fortunately, each sequence allowed kind of a different approach, a different perspective with the sound design. When the bombing of Algiers takes place in his bed, to precede the blast, all the sound is taken down very low. So when Abner switches off the light, that click would seem, well, perhaps unusually loud. And then there's a moment of almost total silence, and then pow. And at the moment of the explosion, I put in a very high-pitched tone. The idea was this is like the ringing in your ears when something very loud happens suddenly. For me, it was a new territory of creative exploration. In terms of designing sound for it and being part of a team, a big team of very talented editors and mixers to put it together. And I felt like I was part of a string quartet. And dialogue, sound effects, ambience were in that mix, and we played as a little ensemble together to do something that was maybe classical in nature.
Well, you know, it's interesting because John was very tired by the time he got to this picture. He had done, in just the calendar year of 2005, he did episode 3 of Star Wars. He did War of the Worlds for Me. He did Memoirs of a Geisha, and he was just beginning Munich. So it was his 4th score in a single year. Even when Johnny was hungry 30 years ago, he didn't do 4 movies in 1 year. But he reached down deep and he pulled something wonderful out of his heart.
I think Steven and I working together maybe 32 years, something like that. And Munich is, I think, less an entertainment film than it is a documentation, if you like, of really fairly recent history.
They're all gone.
The beginning of the film, of course, when Avner's watching the events on television, we hear Hatikva, which is, of course, the national anthem of Israel, which is really a beautiful tune.
People are weeping, tearing their clothes.
So we begin to hear Hatikva on television as it was played, and it gradually morphs imperceptibly into our orchestra playing Hatikva, and that continues through to the end of the scene.
What now?
Now we're going to have a baby.
So why'd that make you team leader?
Because he really knows how to cook a brisket.
Avner's theme, which also I've called Prayer for Peace. The first presentation of it is in a mealtime scene with the team, where it had the functioning of a bonding theme, really, when they were learning each other and becoming acquainted and developing the trust that they eventually needed to have to do their mission. And working backwards in the film, which I sometimes do, starting looking at more the end of the film, I wondered about what I should write and what music should accompany that scene between Avner and his wife and the scene in the tarmac. I think it may have been Steven's idea originally to have a woman singing a kind of cantilena.
You got a wonderful singer, Lisbeth Scott, who had the most amazing, she made up all of her own words. Those words aren't Israeli, they're not Arab words, they're words she made up herself to John's music. And it was just a real, plea for peace, which I think is what Munich really is when you come to think of it. It's what I certainly intended from the outset, was for this to be a plea for peace.
Steven and I have always had very eclectic sensibilities about stories, and we both seem to be interested in a lot of different things. And I can get as excited about making a very popular, audience-driven kind of movie because it's fun, as I can about more serious, dramatic material. And I love the idea that he enjoys the process of going back and forth, and so do I.
This is the story of what people do under great stress, and it stirs some of the issues that we talk about today when confronting terror. And because I'm a filmmaker and not an historian, and I'm not a diplomat, I'm not trying to answer questions here, but I'm more interested in exploring what people go through when they have to deal with overwhelming circumstances. Because I was as riveted as everyone else was in September 1972 to what happened at the Munich Olympics. And here was an event that was riveting and appalling at the same time. And I think our film honors what happened to these athletes so that the memory of these athletes will never be lost.
A place on earth. We have a place on earth. At last.